Welcome back to another episode of the podcast.
What's up?
How are we doing? I have new hair, guys. Crazy. Anyway. Asha, you got some questions for us. What you got? Hit me. Is this a competition?
Always.
All right.
Okay. Whoa, that's kind of loud. Okay. Which country invented ice cream? Oh, I'm so sorry. We're doing trivia questions.
Invented ice cream.
Oh, I'll give you answer choices.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're elite, then you get 2 points if you can just do it without the answer choices.
Hold on, I want to think about it a little bit.
Do you want answer choices?
Ice cream.
Belgium.
Wrong.
I was going to say Italy because I like gelato and stuff.
That's a good answer too.
Is it Italy?
No.
Is it within like that region?
No.
Okay.
China.
Yes. Isn't that weird? I thought it would be
Very.
Italy.
That demographic is very lactose intolerant.
I've never heard that before at all.
There's a high percentage of lactose intolerant.
Because I feel like everything Asian is like milk based. Like all their drinks are milk. So
Hold on, let me
yeah.
make sure that I'm right.
But did you guys hear that? Like,
Yeah. Sorry. 92% of adults.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Which animal sleeps the most?
Are we including hibernation?
No.
Sloth. Koala.
Koala.
I was thinking koala, and then you yelled sloth. And I was like, that sounds like a good answer.
Farah, are you keeping score?
2-2.
has one and Kevin has one.
No, we haven't used her answer choices yet. So technically it's 2-2.
Didn't we do 2 questions?
Yeah, but it's 2 points per answer. Unless we
Okay.
ask.
I'm also keeping all of this in the episode.
Okay. In what month are the most ice cream cones sold in the U.S.?
What month?
August.
July.
Whoa, how did you know that?
Which one?
Who are you talking to?
Is it August? Or
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Obviously.
Well, I said July at the same time that he said August.
Oh, I didn't hear the July. I just heard your response and I was like, who else would I be talking?
Really?
Please cut that out.
What was that?
Please cut that out.
No.
So now it's 4-2.
Yeah.
Okay. What fruit is most eaten in the world?
Bananas.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Which country has the most tornadoes by area?
Country?
Mm-hmm.
Tornadoes. I feel like that's the U.S.
Nope.
I don't even know of another country that gets
I
tornadoes.
was just thinking straight up Kansas. Is that where the Wizard of Oz is placed?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only thing that came to mind. Do you want to get the options? Or do you
Yeah, I guess we gotta go with the options. I honestly can't think of another country that gets a tornado. I feel like they either get hurricanes or cyclones.
What are our options?
Okay. USA,
Okay.
Australia,
Okay.
Canada, and the UK.
Australia.
Wrong.
UK.
Yep.
The UK?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Tornadoes?
They only get one
Hmm.
point.
Okay.
Okay. In what country were the first potatoes fried and served as French fries?
U.S.
Mm-mm.
No, it wasn't.
Belgium.
Correct.
Nice.
I don't know. You're the one keeping score.
He had 64 now with the one that you just gave, right? And then, yeah, okay. That's nice.
It's gonna be really fun when I go back and count this compared to whatever Farah has and see who's right and who's wrong. But continue.
What animal classification is a turtle?
It lays eggs. But it breathes.
Is it an amphibian?
That's the word.
Mm-mm.
No? What are lizards?
A reptile?
Yeah.
Dang it.
Okay. Which mammal has no vocal cords?
No vocal cords? A snake.
No. Oh, that's a good one though.
Snake isn't a mammal.
Oh,
Oh,
I thought she said animal.
You said animal or mammal?
mammal. My bad.
A mammal with. Wait, I feel like I've heard this. A mammal.
I have no clue.
Can I pull up a list of mammals?
Well, can you just give us your list of answers?
No,
Possible?
because then that's one less point.
Yeah, I'm far enough in the lead. I can do with just a point.
You can pull up a list of mammals.
Do I lose any points for doing that?
No.
Nice. Bats?
Mm.
Are bats mammals? Huh.
A giraffe.
Correct. 2 points for
Yay.
Ariel. What species can live on both water and land?
Amphibians.
Correct.
I feel like if I just say certain words enough times, it becomes the answer.
What is a baby rabbit called? This
A
one's
bunny.
No, this one's gonna blow your
A
mind.
bunny.
A baby.
Right? Isn't that weird?
A baby. Excuse me. Rabbit. A kid.
How did you know that?
Is it?
Yeah.
Because I know like baby goats are kids.
Oh, did you say kid?
Yeah.
With a D?
Is it with a T? Kits?
Yeah.
Then I said kids.
Kit or kitten?
Oh, they're called kittens? Interesting.
So too.
How does that point work?
I have no clue. Because I feel like you were wrong every step of the way, even though you were changing the answer.
2, 1.
Ask the game master.
Huh?
2 or 1.
2. Okay. Last one.
Okay.
If you get this one correct, you can get up to Kevin's score.
But it's the last one. Is there a tiebreaker if I get it right?
Yeah. Okay. What vegetable is known to help you see in the dark?
Carrots.
Correct. So that means they're tied. Okay, now I need to give you a really hard one.
I feel like you had something to say about that.
I feel like the math ain't mathin', but whatever. I don't know how I answered like 5 questions in a row. You answered 2.
I answered more than
2 in a row, and now you're tied with me.
She said if I get this one, then I'll be brought up. She didn't put a number to it.
Okay. Okay, how about this? Kevin, you get first opportunity to answer this question.
No.
Okay.
No.
Guys, it's just a game. Calm down. Okay. What is the main ingredient in hummus?
Chickpeas.
Ariel's the winner.
Yay! Love winning. Whoa. I didn't mean to move my whole chair. I'm fine, it's just my allergies.
I was gonna ask.
This happens every year, Kevin.
Okay, it doesn't mean you can't like be sick or something. I was gonna ask, be polite.
Anyways, we are starting a new topic. We are going to be talking about the Bible.
I thought you were pausing for like
Dramatic effect. Yeah, I was hoping it would look like that, and then I couldn't suppress it. All right. We're going to be talking about the Bible. I'll be speaking about Genesis, mainly chapter 3.
Okay.
Right? So we're gonna start in the beginning a little bit, like chapter 1, and then we're gonna jump to chapter 3. All right, so excuse me. In the beginning, God created. Oh my goodness. All right, so the Bible starts out, right? In the beginning, God created. Right? What does that say about God?
He can create.
Yeah. Right? So he is the one that has the
2
ability.
points.
That wasn't a trivia question.
It felt like a trivia
We're no longer
question.
playing the game. We've moved on from that segment, and we are now in a different one. Anyway, so God, right? He is the one with the ability to create like an entire universe by just simply speaking it into existence. So he created, and then essentially he took a step back to admire his hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that what he was making was good. There was a purpose behind it, and he delighted in what his creation was and what he created. So the story of creation, right? It kind of tells us a little bit of the character of God, right? And who he is. But it also tells us about who we are as mankind,
Okay.
right? Because because we are made in his likeness and in his image, right? So therefore we are like God. We're emotional, we're practical, we're intelligent, we're smart. Like we have characteristics of God within us, right? So we reflect, essentially we reflect who God is to the world that is around us, right? Because his presence is it's stamped on us. His presence is like we are living in his presence, right? As we're building that relationship, we're following God, doing all the things, we are living in his presence, or at least we hope to live in his presence, right? And that kind of gives us as humans, gives us as people worth, because I don't have to do anything, and yet I am made in his image and likeness, right? God formed me. He's had a purpose for my life before I was even a thought in my parents' like minds, right? So we're going to jump ahead to chapter 3 now.
Okay.
All right, so this is where conflict comes in. Okay, we're jumping ahead to chapter 3, right, where the drama starts. All right, it gets a little
snap.
It gets a little whoo. All right, so God had created Adam and Eve, and they were given basically free reign over everything except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So in this current time, right? Everything was perfect and as God had intended it to be. And then in chapter 3, we enter the serpent, the antagonist of the story, of the whole Bible, really, to be.
Oh, snap.
Problems enter the scene, right? So, as the serpent enters, right, and he has that initial conversation with Eve, first of all, isn't it wild that she didn't even question the fact that an animal was speaking to her? I'm trying to like put myself in that mind frame because I'm pretty sure that like
my thought is that this was a normal thing.
Yeah.
At that
Which is
time.
like wild to me right now. Because like my first thought would be like, why are you speaking? But yeah, so as the serpent enters, he starts to bring in this air of doubt in God and like this energy of division, right? Because in verses 3 to 5, essentially he's like, oh, you can't eat from anything, right? And then Eve has to go and be like, no, we can eat from everything, just not for this, because God says we'll die if we eat from this tree, right? And then he goes in, the serpent, and then he kind of overminds what God has told Eve, because the serpent is now like, you're not going to die, but you'll essentially just be like God, right? You'll know all of the things, but you won't die. So now there is doubt that's implanted in Eve's mind. There's division between like, there could be great division between Eve and like her relationship with God, because now it's like, why don't you want me to be like you? Right? And so as a result of this conversation, Eve eats from the tree. And then she passes it on to Adam, and he also eats from the tree, right? And as a direct result of this, they felt shameful, right? Their eyes were opened. They realized things that they hadn't realized before, right? Because they didn't know they were naked. They didn't have any shame in the fact that they were unclothed until they ate from this tree. And so they felt shame, and then they covered themselves with leaves, and then that was when they started to become insecure in who they were, right? Because not essentially, but before that, they were secure in the fact that they were God's creations, and they had basically dominion over the garden. What are your thoughts?
So my immediate thoughts are, when it comes to them sinning and that loss of identity, I think that goes back to the way in which mankind is described as being created, which is we're created in the image of God. And the moment Adam and Eve sinned, that image was broken.
Yep.
And once that image was broken, they now see all these other things that, though they were there before, did not matter when they were in the image of God. So them being naked didn't matter when they were in the image of God. There's no indication before that they had a sense of shame that they would even have to hide from God, right? It was one thing for them to hide from each other in a sense, but they hid from God as well, right? So I think that's a big part. And then to your question about, or your thought about Eve, there's a footnote here that says the relationship between Satan and the serpent is not made clear, but Satan is identified with the serpent later in Revelation 12:9, chapter 12:9, 12:14, 12:15, and chapter 20, verse 2. It seems difficult to believe that Eve would not have been suspicious of a talking creature, but at this point in time, Eve probably knew next to nothing about animals, and in any case, the serpent, as it existed before the curse, was a very different creature from the reptile that is familiar to us today.
Yeah, because it had like legs and stuff.
Yeah. So the serpent could have literally talked like...
That's wild. Just
like the original like snake could have had the ability to talk, which is wild. But then it's also wild to think about. Let's say that the snake could talk, and I don't know if you're gonna get to it, but verse 14, where it talks about the curse on the serpent, right? It's heavily implied in that the serpent had like legs and arms, which means Adam and Eve sinning did not just affect them, but it affected like all of creation. Because realistically, and someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, Satan saying, did God really say you must not eat of the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? that statement in and of itself, I don't think is a sin.
No, the statement itself.
Right. Now,
I think where the sin comes in is the act of eating the fruit.
right. But even in verse 4 and 5, where the serpent says, "You won't die. God knows that your eyes will be open as soon as you eat it, and you'll be like God, knowing both good and evil." Unless that part is a lie, the point I'm getting to is, what did the serpent do to get cursed in this thing, right? I understand Adam and Eve getting cursed, right? But what did the serpent do other than make statements, right? Because to me, it's very similar to what Satan will do to Jesus.
The temptation.
The temptations, right? So it's just interesting that this one sin of eating a fruit, right, compared to most of the sinful things that we deal with today, seems so minuscule, yet had such a lasting effect on all of creation.
I think it also comes back to intention, right? Which we talked about a lot, because the snake didn't inherently sin or force them to sin. The intent behind having this conversation and stating these statements was to plant that doubt, right? Was to lead her to sin and to eat the fruit. And even if Adam and Eve didn't eat the fruit, right? At that walk, because Adam communed with God regularly. At the next time they met, I'm sure it would have come up in conversation like, hey, like this weird thing was trying to get us to eat from this tree that you told us not to do. And I feel like either way, the serpent would have had consequences for the action, for trying to tempt them alone.
I wonder if that's the case, just because the serpent is talking and Adam is there. Adam is quiet the entire time, right? Which, based on the footnote, also makes me wonder, maybe Adam doesn't know that much about the animals yet.
Yeah.
Right? To the extent of, well, should a serpent be talking? Right? Because I think the implication has always been Satan possessed this animal and then made it talk, right? I think that's always been the implication for me growing up, was Satan possessed the serpent and that's why it talks. But if we're saying animals could talk at that time, again, I kind of wonder if they would have even understood to bring it up to God. This thing, had they not eaten the fruit, right? I genuinely wonder if they would have even understood that Satan was, and again, we understand it because we've had other human interaction.
No,
they haven't. So I don't even know where we are in the conversation at this point, but it's just one of those things
off
where it's
my
like,
notes is where we are.
so the usual for us. But yeah, I just wonder, had they not eaten the fruit, if they even would have like mentioned it, or mentioned the way you are saying it, like, God, we had this weird conversation. I think it would have been more, hey, do you know the serpent can talk, God? Like,
Yeah,
that's cool.
but then that would have been like, oh, what did he tell you about? Right? So I'm like, even if it wasn't like, hey, God, like this guy tried to get me to eat from this tree. It would have been like, hey, did you know that this does this? And then it would have led into what the conversation was either way. Right? So even if they didn't outrightly say, like, we almost ate from this tree, right? Then what led you to almost eat from this tree if you know? Yeah, let me try to get back on track. So after they ate of the fruit, right, and they were all shameful and covered up and stuff, when God came down for his regular, communication, interaction with Adam, and he hides. And in verse 10, I believe it is, it's where Adam's like, oh, I hid because I was naked, right? And then God is like, who told you that you were naked? Adam automatically throws the blame onto Eve, and then Eve throws it onto... Actually, I feel like Adam throws the blame onto Eve and then God for making Eve. Right? The woman that you brought me.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So
he really blames God, not Eve.
Ah.
Realistically, that I mean, he's not saying Eve gave me the fruit. He's saying
the woman that you gave
the woman
to me.
you gave me.
Yeah.
So he's throwing shade at God
Ah.
for creating Eve.
Interesting. And then Eve automatically blames the serpent for saying like, "Hey, they made me eat it," right?
Mm-hmm.
But no one takes the fall for it, right? No one admits that I'm the one that chose to eat it, right? So they kind of already are giving into that selfish human nature.
Mm-hmm.
In there, you see already how a lot of us act when we are in that moment of conflict, of being called out or of taking accountability. We all automatically, not all of us actually, a lot of us, our instant reaction is to shoo the blame, right?
I know there was some stuff that happened a few years back, and someone called me on something. I was like, nope, didn't happen. Like, I just, like, this person came to me with receipts for something I'd done. And I was 100% guilty, but I was just like, no, I didn't do it. Like, just, that was my first instinct. And I just remember, like, I like, walked away. We actually argued for a while, and I just kept, and I was like, no, I'm gonna just double down on denying it. And then when
It'll go away.
I think like I don't know, like I probably like left or whatever, and then went to bed or whatever. And I just remember going like, why didn't I just like own up to it? Like I did it. Like it
Especially if they have receipts.
yeah. And I was trying to deny their receipts. Like that's not true. Like I was just
Like, oh, you made those up.
Yeah.
Like that's AI.
yeah. And then I remember the next day I was just like, hey, look,
That's
like I had to
gaslighting.
like yeah. I was trying to remember the word for it.
You gaslit them.
Yeah, not effectively at all. And I just remember I was like, yeah, no, you know what? Hey, sorry for, I think the way I responded last night, and yes, I did X, Y, and Z, and then that started a whole nother conversation. But I say I guess I relate to the way Adam and Eve
Handled it.
respond, which is you don't want to be in trouble, right? Especially I think the closer you are to the person, sometimes the harder it is to admit, hey, I failed, I messed up.
Yep.
Right? Because especially at this point, their relationship with God is so close that again, they were so ashamed of themselves for being naked that they had to go run and hide from God.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only imagine what they felt having to now confess to God, hey, yeah, we did eat, like the one thing you told us not to do, we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are. Right. And so I kind of understand why Adam looks for a scapegoat.
Yep.
Eve looks for a scapegoat. And the serpent, I don't even think the serpent gets a chance to
Blame someone.
Yeah, I think as soon as the serpent gets blamed, yeah, it's in verse 14 is the Lord just curses the serpent. But again, it's just one of those things where it's like, I understand why they did it. And I think maybe that was the birthplace of our reaction to being caught, right? But it's just interesting that we still do it to this day.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
years later.
Fleshly nature is fleshly nature. That was very hard to say the second time. I don't know why. But yeah, so it is wild to see that a lot of things that they have done in the biblical days, which is what we talked about before. A lot of times a lot of instances of the way that people reacted in the Bible are the way that a lot of people react nowadays as well.
Yeah.
Right? We don't change in a lot of ways. Like, we'll advance and develop technologically, but I feel like human nature is human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so when God created humans, right, people, out of love, he also gave us the option to choose, right? He gave us free will. So we could either choose to live in that human nature or to live in, like, God's divine plan and purpose for our lives. So why, I guess let me pose a question. Why was it important that God gave them free will? or gave them freedom to choose?
So my take on this has always been, and I read this in a book, I don't know how long ago. You can't have love without free will, right? To take away free will, it's no longer love. It's coerced at best, right? So it's not love. If should God take away our ability to have free will and we then worshiped him, it's not from a place of we love you, God. It's a place of you just made us to do this, and that's what we're programmed to do, this, and that's it.
Wow.
Thank you. 3 points for that one.
We're not taking points anymore. Matter
You
of fact,
say,
take some off because
you say that, but when you watch this episode and you see the point counter,
that's more work for
the entire-
you. Anyways, so I rescind my applause. I take it back. But yeah, that's essentially what my next point was going to be. So he wanted us to love him back, right? You can't, if you program something to be a certain way, it's not going to be any other way, right? So you never know if I manipulate someone into falling in love with me, do they actually love me or did I just make them think that they love me? Crazy, right? So in order to love God wholly and fully and purely, he had to give us the option to choose him, right? Because like you said, if you force relationships, you can never tell if they're authentic. If I'm the only option that you have, if I'm the only friend that you have, obviously you're not going to betray me because you have no one else. But yeah, so out of love as well, God, over the course of time and over the course of the Bible, he also kind of works to restore that bond, that closeness with the people, right? So even when he had to kick Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, in verses 20 to 23, same chapter, it talks about how God made clothes from the animals. Excuse me. God made clothes from the animal skins for Adam and Eve, right? And his fear that if they were to, he also, well, does God fear? I don't know. There was also, I don't want to say God feared that there was also the possibility that if they ate from the tree of life, right, that they would live forever in this broken state away from God, right? Feeling that shame and separated from him all the time. Therefore, the solution to this potential problem was to banish them from the Garden of Eden. Away from the tree of life and away from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, although they had already eaten from it. Okay. And even so, he kind of also gave Adam a way to survive still, right? He didn't just throw them out into the wilderness, right? He was like, you will work for your food, meaning that he provided food for them. They just had to work for it, right? You had to gather, you had to hunt, you had to work for it. So if he wanted to, honestly, he could have struck them down, got rid of them, and created new people and started over. I feel like he had that option. He's God. He could really do whatever he wants. I feel like you had something.
Yes, but I feel like there is a reason. I just don't know how to articulate it, because it's the same thing with the flood, where instead of just wiping out everyone, he still shows mercy to Noah and Noah's family and allows them to survive. Right? I just don't know how to explain it, but there is a reason why he doesn't just wipe them out and restart humanity.
Someone talked about that. Not recently.
I know, and I'm trying to. I just can't remember it right now.
Yeah. Maybe that should be the little footnote that you put in instead of your points, if you recall.
No, I'm gonna put my points in.
But anyway, God is a God of love, right? So he could have thrown them out and made them forage through a desert for fruit, right? To survive. But he didn't. He made clothes for them from the animals, and he gave them a means to survive. Now, their sins did come with consequences, right? As a result, hold on, let me pull up the exact scripture, word for word. As a result of their sins, right? As we mentioned before, the serpent was destined to crawl on his belly and eating dust all the days of his life, right? So legs were stricken away, forced to slither on the ground. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, this is verse 15, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. That is also alluding to the fact that Jesus will defeat death, right? So came from the lineage. He crushed the head of the serpent, right? To the woman, verse 16, to the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So, Eve's punishment, labor, childbearing labor, and everything that comes with that. Adam, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Although through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. So, Adam's punishment, like he said before, he'd have to work for his food, right? God didn't necessarily make it easy for them because it was supposed to be a punishment. Duh. But they will work for what they have, which is the nature of the society that we live in now too, right? You have to work really hard for what you have. More often than not. Depends on your class, I guess. We're not going to get into that. But yeah. All right, in closing, do you have any thoughts before I close?
I have thoughts about why God didn't just kill Adam and Eve.
Oh.
So I kind of remember it now. I had to look up some stuff, but basically, it's a two-part answer. One, technically, Adam and Eve do die because of their sins, right? That's one of the reasons why he didn't allow them to stay in the garden and eat of the tree of life.
Yeah.
Right? So they die, and you can make the argument that they die both physically and spiritually because now they've been cut off from God, right? Which is why Jesus comes back so we can be reconnected to God. So they've been cut off from God, so they've died. They'll eventually die physically, but they've died spiritually because they're cut off from God. Then, because even when you look at Cain and Abel, it doesn't talk about Adam and Eve having a relationship with God. It talks about Cain and Abel having a relationship with God. But then the other part of the answer is that though Jesus had not come yet, God is still merciful.
Yep.
So despite the fact that he knows they are going to die and they're going to experience death and these things, yet he doesn't make it an instantaneous punishment, right? He gives them a chance to continue with their life, to have kids, to now teach these kids how to honor God and things like that. So God is both, he has this sense of justice, but because he loves mankind, he's also gracious.
Yeah. That was essentially what I was going to close with. I was going to say, although a relationship with God is not what he had initially intended for it to be, he still loves us deeply. And his love for us has never changed. Thank you for your time.